Once upon a time, the wicked witch from the candy house was defeated by the brave Hansel and Gretel. And once upon another time, a girl named Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother were saved from the wolf by a hunter. In the end, they all lived happily ever after. Or did they? Prepare yourself for a brand new tale that is nothing like you have ever heard before. It is not a fairy tale, nor is it just a story. It is the brutal truth, a story of triumph over the original victor of the incident. And here is how it truly went. So our tale starts from the end of the well-known version. After Hansel and Gretel defeated the witch, they got back home with heaps of gold in their arms, their parents by their side, waiting for them to explain their disappearance.
Dear mother, dear father, we've missed you so much,
Hansel said.
After getting lost in the woods and almost being eaten by a scary witch, we finally made it back home.
And so he started describing all those terrifying encounters. How they couldn't find their way back, how they saw the candy house, and how the nice old lady that had took care of them turned out to be really an evil witch. When he got to the part of killing the witch, Gretel piped in.
And it was I who pushed the witch into the oven. That is why we could escape. And look what I found in the witch's house. With this gold, we'll never go hungry again. Isn't it wonderful?
The father, instead, looked at them with affection in his eyes.
Oh, my dear children, these riches mean nothing compared to your lives. All I care about is that you have both got home safely, and that's what matters most.
The father kneeled down to embrace his beloved ones, and they sobbed with relief and with joy. Beside them, their stepmother showed no emotion, yet inside she was shocked and filled with disbelief. How could her mother, the powerful witch, possibly be defeated by two small children? But on the outside, she still cried with them.
Oh, my dear Hansel and Gretel, I'm so glad to see that you both have made it back home safe and sound.
So that night, she cooked a feast for all of them as a celebration, and they ate dinner merrily. When everyone was content and had fallen into a deep sleep, the stepmother decided to go and check for herself if what they had told her was true. She arrived at the candy house with no problem, only to see her mother lying on the floor, weak as a kitten. Fortunately, unlike what Hansel and Gretel had told her, the witch was still alive. The stepmother felt relieved. Yet another look at her mother's poor predicament ignited the rage in her heart. The stepmother had sent plenty of children to the witch's house before, but this was the first time that they had tasted such failure. At this thought, she started to plot her revenge. When the stepmother got back home, she dragged Hansel out of his room at once. Without warning, she cast a spell and turned him into an enormous and hideous wolf. She then smirked at him and said tauntingly,
You sly children think you are so brilliant for defeating a witch with your bare hands, huh? Well, too bad the truth is you didn't. And you can't. Just wait and see. I will make sure that both of you pay for what you've done to my mother.
At this point, she screamed suddenly at the top of her lungs.
Oh my goodness! There's a wolf in our house! A wolf!
The father stormed out of the bedroom at once with a gun in his hand, found the wolf, and shot 2 bullets at it, but missed. In the end, the wolf escaped. The next day, the stepmother gave Gretel a Red Riding Hood as a gift, urging her to put it on immediately. As soon as she did, the magical hood caused Gretel to forget everything. So the stepmother lured Gretel away, and from then on, Gretel no longer existed, but continued on by the name of Little Red Riding Hood. One day, the stepmother said to Little Red Riding Hood,
"Your grandmother who lives on the other side of the woods is ill. We cannot do much, but it would be so nice if you would go and visit her with a basket of pies and wine. This will surely make her happy."
She gave Gretel the basket and then reminded her,
"But be aware of the big bad wolf that's lurking in the forest. No matter if he speaks to you or shows any kindness, keep in mind that the ones that charm you with words are always the ones that you should be most cautious of."
So Little Red Riding Hood went on her way. Everything went as smoothly as the gentle white clouds in the clear blue sky. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. It was such a lovely day. Yet, not far away, between the trees, the bushes shuffled, and a pair of eyes gleamed in the darkness. The wolf observed Little Red Riding Hood silently. After a while, he decided to come out of the woods to approach her, greeting her in his kindest tone in order not to frighten her.
"Hello, little girl. What are you doing all alone in these dark woods?"
Little Red Riding Hood replied,
I am going to visit my sick grandmother who lives on the other side of the woods.
Hearing this, the wolf paused, looked at her thoughtfully, then smiled and suggested,
"But isn't today such a nice day? You should certainly spend some time enjoying this fine weather. Come with me. I know a beautiful garden where you can pick some flowers to bring to your poor old granny."
Little Red Riding Hood remembered her mother's warning, but could not possibly reject such a tempting suggestion. Thus she replied,
That's such a lovely idea. Some flowers will be nice.
and followed the wolf. After arriving at the garden, the wolf turned to her and said,
"I have to go now, but take as much as you want, little girl. And remember to pick the prettiest flowers for your granny."
and he rose and left. The moment the wolf was out of Little Red Riding Hood's sight, he ran with all his might towards the other side of the woods, his heart pounding in his ears. The wolf had successfully bought himself some extra time to prevent her from falling into the trap.
"I will do whatever it takes to protect her,
Thought the wolf.
no matter if it means killing someone or sacrificing myself."
Thus, when he arrived at the house on the other side of the woods, he swallowed the grandmother up without hesitation. Then he went to the closet and dressed himself up as the grandmother, so that Little Red Riding Hood wouldn't be startled by his appearance and run away, and they could talk to each other a bit more. After a while, someone knocked on the door, and in came Little Red Riding Hood.
Hello, grandmother. I brought some pie and wine and some beautiful flowers I picked for you along the way.
"Oh, how lovely!
Croaked the wolf.
Do put it right on the table, my dear."
So she did, and they talked to each other merrily for quite a while. Then Little Red Riding Hood tilted her head and said,
I just noticed this, but grandmother, what big ears you have.
said the Little Red Riding Hood.
"The better to hear you with, my dear."
Replied the wolf,
But grandmother, what big eyes you have.
said the Little Red Riding Hood as she edged closer to the bed.
"The better to see you with, my dear."
Replied the wolf,
But grandmother, what big teeth you have.
said the Little Red Riding Hood, her eyes widening. Before the wolf could reply, however, the effect of tasting human flesh finally started to kick in. Before he could utter a word of warning, his mind was drowned out by the dark nature of a wild beast, and his human heart was forever buried.
Grandmother,
Asked Little Red Riding Hood uncertainly.
are you alright?
The wolf did not answer. Slowly, his back hunched, his claws twitched, his eyes glistered with hunger. A muffled growl leaked from his mouth, and in a flash, he bounced out of the bed and roared.
The better to eat you with, my dear.
Meanwhile, after his family's mysterious disappearance, the father wandered in the woods as a hunter. That very day, he happened to come across a house with an open door, which sparked his curiosity.
Why is the door of this house open? Let's see if everything is fine inside.
He went in to check and found a sleeping wolf with a round belly on the bed, with the master of the house nowhere to be seen. He shot 2 bullets straight through the wolf's head at once, killing it immediately. Then the hunter took a knife and sliced it apart, saving Little Red Riding Hood and the grandmother from its belly. Covered with blood, Little Red Riding Hood went to clean herself, while the grandmother stood outside to thank the hunter. Then the hunter noticed something was glowing. He turned, and after the light faded away, he saw that where the wolf's body had laid was now replaced by the body of a boy. Deadly silence filled the room.
Hansel?
Muttered the hunter. Slowly, he walked towards the lifeless corpse, his whole body trembling.
No, it can't be. How could he? Why is he?
He kneeled down and touched the boy's face, but there was no response. The only warmth that was left was declining, little by little. Time froze. As if his spirit was completely sucked away, the hunter stood up with a hollow expression, walked slowly towards the door, then left. The grandmother turned and started to clean up the house. Not far away, the bang of a gunshot echoed through the woods. After refreshing herself, Little Red Riding Hood came back with her blood-stained hood folded neatly between her arms. She looked around, but the wolf and the hunter were nowhere to be seen. Before she could give them a second thought, though, the grandmother smiled at her and said,
My dear, would you be so kind as to heat up the pie for old Granny? It has been such a tiring day, and your old Granny really needs some energy now.
Of course, grandmother.
She went and took the stone cold pie out of the basket, heated up the oven, and then shoved it in. To make sure it wouldn't burn, she kneeled in front of the oven.
Grandmother, what big oven you have!
Said the Little Red Riding Hood. Nobody answered. A sweet odor that she hadn't noticed before pervaded the room, the smell of candies. Then she remembered everything, all at once. Oh no, where is Hansel? Gretel immediately turned around, and all she saw was the witch, glaring down at her, her mouth slowly cracked into a smile.
The better to eat you with, my dear.